There are hundreds of films out there, good and bad alike, that really just could have done with knowing when to stop. A key part of filmmaking is knowing when to make that crucial final cut. However, unfortunately for us, there's just too many filmmakers that didn't quite get the memo. I'm Amy from What Culture, and here are 10 movies that should have ended 5 minutes earlier. 10. Psycho. This list would be remiss to not include such a famous movie, especially one that comes with one of the most condemning pieces of criticism Hitchcock managed to gain. At the end of this beloved classic film, there is one scene so heinous that one critic named it arguably Hitchcock's worst scene. I am, of course, talking about the scene right towards the end of the film where we are forced to sit through several minutes of the psychiatrist telling us in detail what exactly is wrong with Norman Bates. Screenwriter Joseph Stefano explained that this scene was there in all its expositional glory to make sure that audiences understood Bates correctly and didn't attribute his criminality to the wrong things. With the explanation in mind that audiences at the time wouldn't understand what Hitchcock was going for, the scene does feel a little more acceptable. However, this doesn't take away from the fact that the ending would have been so much punchier and more impactful if we just skipped the psychoanalysis and gone straight to seeing Bates, sat in a white room wrapped in a blanket and completely consumed by his mother personality. 9. Remember Me. The last few minutes of this film deliver what one critic has called a borderline offensive final twist, so really it was made to appear on this list. Remember Me is a 2010 romance coming-of-age drama with a twist, and the twist is, get this, that the protagonist dies at the end in the 9/11 attacks. Literally out of nowhere, as our main man Tyler waits in his father's office, which we have to note is in the North Tower of the World Trade Center, a cutaway to his younger sister's classroom reveals the date to be September the 11th, 2001. Then in a matter of seconds, it cuts to black as we infer the planes strike the Twin Towers. Instead of having the film end on a positive as relationships began to heal and the future stretched out ahead of our characters, for apparently no reason other than pure shock value, we just had to drag 9/11 into it. As with anything concerning that historic, horrific day, a lot of people were upset. For what could have been quite a nice film, it ruined its chances in the last few minutes by playing the exploitation card, and there is no coming back from that. 8. Matchstick Men. Now, it may seem like low-hanging fruit to dunk on a Nic Cage movie, but trust me on this. The film follows a con artist becoming a better person through his blossoming relationship with his estranged daughter. That is, until we find out that the daughter herself is the biggest con of all. It is quite a good reveal, and overall, it's a pretty enjoyable movie. The problem is, however, that it probably would have done better just to end on the reveal. It can be pretty hit and miss, ending a film with a time jump scene. In this one, we meet our protagonist Roy again 1 year down the line, and we see that he's set his life straight and taken a job as a carpet salesman. His con daughter comes into his shop one day and they have a kind of awkward interaction. The obvious goal in the scene was to emphasize the moral message that regardless of whether he was changing for his daughter or himself, Roy is a better man and is happier for it. Whilst it's not necessarily a movie-ruining addition, it was unnecessary and a bit on the nose. 7. Panic Room. When I say this final scene did nothing but add runtime, I'm really not exaggerating. After having a pretty tense 100 minutes or so of back and forth between a bunch of criminals and a terrified mother-daughter duo, suddenly we're sat on a park bench on a nice autumn day browsing the newspaper. Aside from the fact that they seem to have overcome the trauma of a home invasion and almost dying remarkably quickly, why was this scene necessary? All the action was already said and done. There was no need for several minutes of Kristen Stewart reading us the home ads from the local tabloid. Her mum even criticises her choices, asking if she really needs that much space, as if they haven't literally just moved out of their last house, which was a huge mansion. The space wasn't the problem in the last house, love. It was the fact you locked yourself in a tiny room without your daughter's medication or a working phone. Overall, it was just a weird, unnecessary addition to the film that didn't need to be there. 6. The Dark Knight Rises. Whilst some people liked the ending of The Dark Knight Rises, it definitely also raised a few eyebrows. It's a pretty impressive feat that Bruce Wayne survived a nuclear explosion, never mind that after all that he was able to just go about living a normal person's life, sitting in the sunshine at a European cafe. What happened with all his money? What's he gonna do for the rest of his life? And how has nobody recognised him? Aside from this, there was the whole John Blake issue. We find that his real name is Robin, but that has pretty much no significance at all. And then we find that he's been directed to the Batcave, as if the whole trilogy hasn't just proven again and again that people taking on a vigilante role does more harm than good. So what? Bruce Wayne retires for the good of everyone and somehow reaches the conclusion that someone else should just go to the Batcave and do their best to take over. Yeah, I mean, there seems like there's some potential for that to go wrong. 5. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Have we seriously learned nothing from all the previous movies? Nothing at all. In these final 5 minutes, in complete earnest, we get Ian Malcolm telling us that we just need to learn to live with the dinosaurs. And then the movie in the same breath shows us footage of a surfer about to be chomped by a mosasaurus. We very clearly can't live with the dinosaurs. That's what all the movies have taught us. Basically, the ending of the film is just big sweeping shots of the dinosaurs incorporating themselves into nature as if it's the most natural thing in the world and wouldn't obviously just wipe us out within like 2 years. These creatures were here before us, and if we're not careful, they're gonna be here after. Yeah, obviously. So why are we not doing anything about it? I mean, Chris Pratt just releases his little dinosaur friend out into the world as if it's not gonna start gulping neighborhood cats at a frankly alarming rate. The whole film is frustrating enough without these final few minutes of absolute rubbish. 4. The Rise of Skywalker. Regardless of your nuanced opinions on the movie as a whole, there were so many obvious problems with that final scene that we would be foolish to just ignore them. The most popular thing that people were pointing out was the cringe factor. That entire bit with Rey burying Leia and Luke's lightsabers in the sand and announcing to a curious passerby that she's Rey Skywalker just didn't hit the way they wanted it to, especially when you consider that Luke was known to hate Tatooine and now his saber will spend eternity there. Essentially, it just wasn't the big finale that fans were looking for, especially those who've spent their entire lives watching Star Wars in all its forms. It added very little to the story overall, other than some extra minutes, and they really just could have put us all out of our misery by ending it in the middle of the little forest party. 3. Wild at Heart. We are back on the Cage train for the second time in this list, but this time it's for much more ridiculous reasons. Weaving references to the Wizard of Oz into a movie about a couple trying to evade a hitman seems like an odd choice at best, and at worst it's a completely nonsensical concept that ruins any immersion anyone was able to muster in this film. In the final scene, a bunch of bad guys beat the crap out of our protagonist, Sailor, and he hallucinates seeing the Good Witch from the Wizard of Oz, inspiring him to go after his girlfriend and get her back. He stands up, apologizes to and thanks the guys that knocked him out, and then goes running over the tops of cars in gridlock traffic. The only way it could have looked more ridiculous is if he was wearing a snakeskin jacket. Oh, he's wearing a snakeskin jacket, isn't he? This just needed a slightly less ridiculous ending to make it a passable film, and just getting rid of these last few minutes would have done the job. 2. Ghosts of War. What was actually a pretty interesting premise in the end, and a film that was at least intriguing throughout, if not a complete masterpiece, was absolutely killed off by the last few minutes' big twist. The film has a merciful 95-minute runtime, but after spending 75% of that in suspense and wondering what the hell is going on, it feels like a betrayal that the ending was so poor. I still feel like I invested enough time into that movie that it owed me better. It had us on board with the whole it's not real, it was all a simulation thing, just about. But when you add another supernatural element on top of that, having just discounted all the previous supernatural stuff as being part of the process, it just takes away from what could have been an okay twist. They could have very well gotten away with saying that all the haunting was just a glitch in the machine, but no, they doubled down and made it real haunting, which really cheapened the whole sci-fi element. Some others have complained that the ending was rushed, but seeing as that was the ending they chose to go with, I'm just thankful it was over as soon as possible. 1. Superman 1978. Classic films are not safe from criticism, and as much as people love this 70s Superman, you have to admit that the ending is a cop-out. Now, I'm not saying that I wanted Lois to die, I'm just saying that if you're gonna kill her, then you have to stick with that decision. You can't just have Superman save the day in the last few minutes by zooming around the planet a few times, come on. The last 5 minutes or so of the film dedicate an irritatingly stretched out amount of time to showing our hero flying around and around the planet. And cut into this intermittently, we see shots of disasters on Earth reversing themselves. Despite being warned earlier not to mess around with changing human history, Superman, in his infinite wisdom, decides to do it anyway. And you know what? Fair play, because there's no consequences. The last bit of the film undoes any tension that was created by earlier threats. Messing with history is fine. Lois didn't die and probably never will, and Superman can pretty much do anything he wants, and if it goes wrong, he can fix it by taking a quick zoom around the planet. Without these last 5 minutes, the following films maybe would have gone in a different direction, with Lois being dead and all. But hey, you know, you win some, you lose some. And with that, we've finished our list of 8 movies that should have ended 5 minutes earlier. If there's any other films that you just hate the final 5 minutes of, then let us know in the comments below. And remember to check out whatculture.com for more lists and articles like this every single day. I've been Amy from What Culture, and I'll catch you next time.